going to hand over to my delightful partner here, Karen, and she can then take along the conversation of where we are.
Thank you, Bernie. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. A few years ago, my mother and father-in-law went to watch a show in Manchester, and partway through the show, father-in-law decided he couldn't wait any longer. He needed to pop off to the gents, so off he went. Disappeared. My mother-in-law sat there watching the show. 10 minutes went by. There was nowhere to be seen. 20 minutes went by. Still not back in his seat. My mother-in-law started to get a bit twitchy. Thought, I better go and find an usher, see where he is. Next thing she knows, out on the stage, Pavarotti's there, and the crescendo of Nessun Dorma. Who should appear? Stayed right, my father-in-law, having got lost on the way back from the toilets. And that's a bit like how I feel today, stood next to this gentleman here, and all the wonderful speakers that we've heard today. So I'm really privileged to be able to have an opportunity to speak to everybody today. Before the security guards come and carry me away, I'll just say a few things. And first of all, thank you to Bernie and all the other people that have spoken today that have shared their experiences with us. It's been phenomenal to listen to them. And it reminded me really of why we set sail on our journey at bMindful Psychology. And it was started originally by a couple of gentlemen that had worked within residential childcare for many, many years. And over that time, they'd seen some of the problems that we've talked about today. Frequent breakdowns in placements, young people that they were trying to contain, they were trying to manage their behaviours. And the best one that we like these days is that when local authorities ring and say, we've got this young person, we want to bring them into your home, and actually we want them to start therapy next week, an hour of a clinical psychologist's time, every week for the next 12 weeks. And they thought, actually, that's not the right way to do it. And we've heard a little bit today from Andrea and Margarita when they talked earlier today about the therapeutic approaches to care. And so we wanted to set up an organisation that focused on that opportunity, to work with care teams, to help them understand that trauma-informed therapeutic approach to care. And so that's what we've set about doing. And so we started a lot by training, and we looked at what can we do to help people understand what it means to be a therapeutic care support team. What does it look like? What does it feel like? And so we started delivering those types of training. We then wanted to talk to people about the fact that all these traumas and the experiences that the young people have had, the effects that it's had on their relationships with the adults around them, how they interact on a day-to-day basis, because we wanted them to understand that what they saw from these young people was actually as a result of what they'd experienced in their earlier life. We also wanted them to understand that the traumas and the experiences that they'd had has actually had an impact on their childhood development, the way their minds were, their mental development, their physical development, and how best they can support them. But what we knew is that actually just delivering that training and giving them that knowledge wasn't really enough. We needed to do more. And so what we started to do is to do regular consultations with residential childcare homes, with fostering families, with schools, with teachers, to help them understand that particular unique individual that they're supporting on a day-to-day basis, because we know that every child is different. So we can sit in a classroom and we can learn the theories and what's happening, but actually we want to look at each individual child as they enter the home. And so we started that process, and I can't take any credit for any of that. My team of clinicians, we have psychologists, we have psychotherapists who are really dedicated to working with children, and they go in and they support residential childcare homes on a day-to-day basis. The other element that we wanted to do is to really recognise actually that the care teams themselves are doing a really challenging job. Day in, day out, they turn up, no matter what they're faced with. And actually we wanted to give them an opportunity to reflect on their own practice, look at what was working, what wasn't working, and why, what they could do differently in the future. And so we make sure that we make space for them to reflect on their practice, that they can also have an opportunity to talk about how what they're experiencing on a day-to-day basis is having an impact on them, and how it impacts on how they deliver care to the children that are in the homes. And so we've put that package of services together. And like I say, I can't take any credit for any of that on a day-to-day basis, but the clinicians that we have are fabulous in terms of the support that they provide. The role that I play is gathering people that share that vision with us, more clinicians, more psychotherapists, more psychologists that can go in and support the homes that we're working with, the schools that we're working with. And the other thing that I do is go out and collect organisations that want to work in that way, that recognise that by having that opportunity to work with clinicians, they can better understand the children that they're caring for. One of the great jobs that I have is to speak with those organisations on a regular basis and find out what's happening in the home, how the service is going, what we might need to do differently. And I had a conversation only last week with one of those organisations, and they have a home. It's got one young lad in it. Unfortunately, he couldn't manage in a bigger home, so he's in a home on his own with a care team. And what they said is that actually this young person's got really complex needs. He's really struggling at the moment. And had it not been for the clinical support that they've been receiving in the home, if they'd have looked 6 months prior, actually that young person, they just wouldn't have been able to cope. They would have moved him on to another home, and it would have started all that re-traumatisation for that particular young person. But what she said is that because the staff recognised why things were happening, why he was responding in a certain way, why he was interacting with them in a certain way, the staff could deal with it in a more confident way, and they were prepared to stay the course and help that young person. They also talked about the fact that this one particular staff member, every time he was on shift, there was incidents happening with this young person. They couldn't understand why. And they said in the past what they would likely have done is actually investigated it, probably managed his performance, might have even dismissed him from the company because every time he was on shift, things happened. But what they understood is that actually this person was this young lad's key worker. And actually he felt comfortable when this member of staff was on shift, and he could express those emotions in the only way that he knew how. And so again, it just changed their way of thinking in terms of what they were doing with their care team. The other thing that we did was we talked to the key worker. And we said to him, how are you finding it? And he says, well, actually, he said, if what was happening now had happened 6 months ago, I would have left. I couldn't have coped. I would have moved on because it was just too difficult. He said, but because I understand that this young person trusts me, and that's why all these incidents that are happening when I'm on shift, I'm really privileged to be in that position. And actually, I don't want to leave. I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying. And it was absolutely heartwarming to hear that story. I was speechless, and that does not happen very often. And I went away and I put the phone down and I'm like, oh my goodness, that's amazing. And of course I rang the clinician up straight away and just said what a fabulous job she's doing. And I just thought that actually that one young lad, if we can maintain that placement, we can maintain that home and he can build those relationships, we've made one difference. And it reminded me that, oh my goodness, this is why we're here. This is why we set up this organisation. Let's carry on doing it. And that's what we're doing. And like I say, I'm really privileged to be working with some fabulous clinicians, and we'll continue to do that. And I'm very excited about the opportunity that we've heard today in terms of changing the sector that we work in. We've identified what some of those problems are, and it's only really by looking at all those different elements that we can make a real change. So thank you for listening. Before I get dragged off the stage somewhere, thank you very much for your time today. Enjoy the rest of your day.